You're listening to The Tom Daniel Show, and I'm your host, Tom Daniel. Since Thanksgiving is upon us, I want to take you somewhere unexpected, back more than 400 years to a moment that predates Plymouth, predates the Pilgrims, and predates the origin story that most of us learned in school. It's a story that, for most of our history, barely survived. And yet it reshapes one of our most cherished national traditions. Because the actual first Thanksgiving in America didn't happen in Massachusetts. It happened in Virginia. Not days earlier or even months earlier. It was 2 years earlier. And unlike the feast-filled image we associate with a holiday, the first Thanksgiving was, well, let's put it this way, it wouldn't make for a great painting. No banquet table, no shared meal with the Indians, not even your grandmother's dressing, a slice of pecan pie. It was instead a moment of cold air, kneeling settlers, and a prayer spoken on a riverbank, all after a voyage so harrowing the passengers probably weren't sure they'd live long enough to set foot on land again. Today we're going to walk through that forgotten scene, recover how it disappeared, and see what it adds to our understanding of the holiday that has become so central to American life. And along the way, we're going to put Plymouth back in its proper place. Not erased, just understood alongside this older, quieter moment in time. So grab that slice of pecan pie, settle in, and let's talk about the real first Thanksgiving. Now, most of us grew up with the same image. Pilgrims sitting peacefully with the Wampanoags in 1621, sharing a harvest meal after surviving their first brutal year in Massachusetts, as if there were another kind. It's a powerful scene. It feels foundational, almost iconic. And it's true that the Plymouth settlers held a harvest celebration and that it involved diplomacy, food, and relief. But it wasn't the earliest English Thanksgiving on American soil. To find that, we go a little further south to the James River in Virginia in the year 1619. Imagine the landscape, quiet, wintry, sparsely inhabited, far from the far more famous colony at Plymouth. The land belonged to a new outpost called Berkeley Hundred, a settlement created by 4 English investors who saw opportunities in Virginia's early colonial economy. One of them, John Smith of Nibley, was an historian. And it's because he was an historian that we know what happened that December. His writings, rediscovered centuries later, became the key that unlocked this forgotten episode. Wait a minute. John Smith? John Smith, didn't he kidnap Pocahontas? Well, no, and no. Captain John Smith of Jamestown never kidnapped Pocahontas. That was somebody else. And this is a totally different John Smith anyway. Captain John Smith was the famous soldier-explorer associated with Jamestown. He knew Pocahontas, but never kidnapped her, and definitely never married her. He wrote extensively about the Jamestown colony in Virginia, and he was a public figure during his lifetime. But this John Smith is different. This is John Smith of Nibley, who was an historian and landowner from Gloucester. He was one of 4 Englishmen involved in organizing the Berkeley Hundred expedition. His collection of documents is the only surviving source about the 1619 Thanksgiving. He himself never lived in Virginia. He was not an explorer, not a colonial commander, and his work was rediscovered by Lyon Tyler in the 20th century, who was the son of U.S. President John Tyler. But before we get to the moment of Thanksgiving itself, we need to understand the people who made it here and what they endured to reach that shore. Picture a ship called the Margaret, leaving Bristol, England on September 16, 1619. On board were 38 settlers. Ordinary people, not wealthy aristocrats, not famed explorers, just folks. Many of them were craftsmen, laborers, or young men seeking a chance at land or fortune. Their leader was Captain John Woodleaf, a veteran of the earlier Jamestown settlement and a survivor of experiences far worse than most of us could ever imagine. The Atlantic Ocean in the fall of 1619 was not a nice lady. The Margaret sailed into not one but several severe storms. These were violent tempests, the kind that struck real fear into even experienced sailors. Imagine the thunder, the shudder of wooden planks taking on water, the creaking of masts under winds so strong they seemed to bend. The passengers clung to anything they could, ropes, barrels, beams, each other, praying with the kind of intensity that only absolute desperation produces. And this is not just one storm. This is storm after storm after storm. Now, by the time the storms relented, the people aboard the ship were exhausted and shaken. Supplies had been totally drenched, tempers frayed, and for weeks the horizon offered no guarantee that they would ever see land again. And then, finally, November 28th, they saw the entrance to the Chesapeake Bay. The relief they felt must have been indescribable. And 2 days later, they entered the mouth of the James River. The further upriver they went, the calmer the waters, the more hopeful the atmosphere. And on December 4th, they reached their destination, Berkeley 100. Their next action became one of the most remarkable and overlooked moments in American history. The settlers disembarked the ship, stepped onto fresh ground, and immediately gathered in a group. Captain Woodleaf read the instructions that the Virginia Company had given them before the voyage ever began, and in that document was a requirement, a mandate, that the day of their arrival would be kept every year as a perpetual day of thanksgiving to God. It said that exact word, thanksgiving. And so, on December 4th, 1619, the colonists kneeled in the cold Virginia air and prayed their thanks. That was the entire event. No feast, no harvest, no Indians, no spread of food whatsoever. Just prayer, gratitude, and the simple acknowledgement that surviving the Atlantic Ocean was in itself a miracle. This was the first officially recorded Thanksgiving in what would become the United States. It's simple, it's stark, it's earnest. And for more than 300 years, no one talked about it. You're listening to The Tom Daniels Show, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Tom Daniels Show, and I'll tell you what I'm thankful for this holiday season. Mary Mac. Mary Mac is the world's most perfect band. So how did a moment this significant fall out of our national memory? Now, the answer begins with tragedy. Just a few years after its founding, Berkeley 100 was destroyed in the 1622 conflict between the Powhatan Confederacy and the English. Yeah, that was my own ancestor, Chief Opechancanough Powhatan, who planned and led the massacre. The settlement was burned, its people killed, and its story abruptly ended. Unlike Plymouth, Berkeley didn't grow into a town or a tradition-bearing community. There were no annual reenactments, no church sermons commemorating the day, no multi-generational memory. It simply vanished into the chaos of early colonial life. The only reason we even know about the 1619 Thanksgiving at all is because John Smith wrote about it, and his writings weren't rediscovered until the early 20th century. And when they were finally found, it was like opening a forgotten drawer in an old cabinet, one that contained a small but crucial piece of American history. Lyon Gardner Tyler, the son of President John Tyler, accidentally uncovered John Smith of Nibley's papers while conducting research at the New York Public Library. The papers were known as the Nibley Papers, and they detailed the 1619 settlement of Berkeley, Virginia, and they'd gone largely unnoticed for decades despite being published by the library in 1899. Tyler was a retired president of William and Mary, and he was researching a book on early Virginia history when he made this discovery in 1931. The documents provided concrete proof that the first Thanksgiving in the New World occurred in Virginia in 1619, an event that had been largely forgotten for over 300 years. But there's another reason the Virginia Thanksgiving didn't enter the mainstream narrative. The national story was being shaped somewhere else. For centuries, New England dominated American education and historical interpretation. The Thanksgiving that people knew, the one with the feast and fellowship, came from Massachusetts, not Virginia. And frankly, the Plymouth story is a little bit more Hollywood. It's easier to teach. It has food, cooperation, moment of peace between two cultures. Berkeley's version is quieter, more austere, and less emotionally dramatic. So one became legend, the other became a footnote, until someone finally opened that forgotten drawer. Now there's one more twist to the story I've always loved. In 1962, President John F. Kennedy issued a Thanksgiving proclamation that celebrated the Pilgrims of Plymouth as the originators of the holiday. You know, he was a Massachusetts guy himself, right? A Virginia lawyer named John J. Wicker noticed something missing. He sent a letter to the White House respectfully informing the president that he had overlooked the earlier Virginia observance. Kennedy's staff, specifically the historian Arthur Schlesinger Jr., wrote back, acknowledging the oversight and blaming it with an unusual degree of honesty on what he called New England bias. Man, that's an understatement. And in 1963, Kennedy corrected the record in his proclamation, giving Virginia its rightful place in the story. It was a small gesture, but symbolically it was enormous. Thanksgiving suddenly had 2 points of origin, one devotional, one celebratory. And together they formed the broader American tradition that we know today. Now, to understand Thanksgiving today, we need both Plymouth and Berkeley. Berkeley gave us a Thanksgiving rooted in survival, humility, and religious gratitude. It captures the feeling of barely making it, of stepping onto land after a storm, of recognizing that being alive is reason enough to give thanks. Plymouth gave us the tradition of feasting, of harvest celebration, of communities gathering around a table. It's a moment of abundance, of diplomacy, and of shared human experience. If you combine the two threads, survival and feast, gratitude and gathering, you get something very much like the modern American holiday. Thanksgiving didn't spring from one source. It evolved, braided from multiple origins. And that complexity makes it richer, not more confusing. So why even tell this story? I mean, why revisit a piece of history that sat forgotten for so long? Because Thanksgiving, perhaps more than any other holiday, depends on memory. It's about looking backward as much as forward. It's about gratitude and reflection and acknowledging the people and events that shaped us. And when we widen the story of Thanksgiving, when we make room for the quiet moment on the James River, as well as the bustling feast at Plymouth, we gain a broader understanding of how gratitude took root in English America. We see that before there was a turkey, before there were football games, before there were parades and cranberry sauce and family road trips, there was a small group of settlers kneeling in the cold, giving thanks for the simple and profound gift of survival. And there's something profoundly human in that. So this Thanksgiving, as you gather around your own table, whether it's filled with food or whether it's a quiet, simple meal, take a moment to remember that gratitude in America didn't begin with a feast. It began with a prayer by a river. A moment of relief, a moment of survival, a moment that nearly disappeared from the historical record, but now stands beside Plymouth as part of the much larger, much richer story of how we give thanks. I'm Tom Daniel, and may your holiday be thoughtful, meaningful, and full of the kinds of memories that last. This has been the Tom Daniel Show. Keep listening, keep learning,